Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to be tackling one of the most challenging issues of our time, and that is, our relationship to money. And out of that, of course, comes our relationship to the whole idea of prosperity, of abundance, and at base, you could really say self-worth. So no matter how you look at it, folks, we're going to be dealing with some pretty meaty matters, some very important subjects that some say money makes the world go round. And we are going to be dealing with someone who is somewhat of an expert on the subject, the author of The Money Anxiety Cure, award-winning Koorosh Ostowari from the Bay Area. Koorosh has been a long-time expert entrepreneur in the real estate industry in the Bay Area and has done very, very well for himself. And out of that, he felt that he wanted to share his experience, his knowledge, as well as a sense of inner peace that he later cultivated after much stress, by the way. That he cultivated through studying at Spirit Rock Dharma Center meditation, mindfulness meditation, which he has been teaching in prisons for some years now. As a result of this, he has been recently honored with the 2015 Certificate of Special Recognition by the United States Congress and a Certificate of Recognition by the California State Legislature, in part for his public service, that is the work within the North California prison system, as well as for his work in the public sector, helping clients and students cultivate mindfulness, alleviate anxiety, and achieve work-life balance, all along achieving also financial well-being. So it's a real pleasure to have Koorosh with me today, talking with all of you about what his journey has been personally in dealing with a subject that everyone feels anxiety about at one time or another, sometimes a massive amount, sometimes moderate, and sometimes even very little. Well, we can learn about how those degree changes occur and what we can do about that, as well as coming to a greater understanding of what money is to us, what it means, and how we can also use it wisely in service to all mankind, all humanity. So, Koorosh, I want to welcome you to A Better World. A pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you, Mitchell. It's wonderful to be on your show, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
Absolutely. You deserve every word of it. You've been recognized not just by Mitchell Rabin at A Better World, but even by our United States Congress. I want to just kudos to you. Mazel tov, as we say in Chinese. That's really quite a commendation. Yeah.
It's nice to get a pat on the back, but really, we're all in this together. So, thank you, and I'm a fan of yours too, Mitchell, so thank you.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have you on. And as you know, I read your book very thoroughly, Koorosh, and I really spent time with it, absorbing it and enjoying it, and following the subtle points that are oftentimes made in it. And I know you make these often in your teaching prisoners and other students when teaching mindfulness meditation and the rest. Why don't we first just begin really with a little bit of your own background? It's so interesting, the humble beginnings with which you began life in the United States with your mother, and tell us a little bit about that so we get to know you a little better personally.
Yeah, sure. Mitchell, I mean, just like so many people who migrated to this wonderful country and had to start from nothing, my mother came with my father and, with 3 kids. Unfortunately, Dad left, and my mom had to raise 3 kids with no child support. And, back in the 70s, it was really hard. And so she had to figure out how to make it, and thank God this country offered her that opportunity. I mean, it was very hard for a Persian woman to do much back in Iran back in those days. But here, she got her real estate license, became very successful, And so we watched this woman go from nothing to an amazing powerhouse in the real estate business. And, we watched and learned and experienced what it's like to go from nothing to building up knowledge and wisdom and experience in the local real estate business. And she also embodied a lot of clarity and focus, and she always emphasized have integrity, combine it with of course hard work, and make sure you serve your clients well, and don't be greedy and be generous. And we tried to follow her footsteps. She's an amazing teacher, but I knew there were many other layers to this journey of prosperity, and so maybe we can touch on that a little bit on this show.
Sure. So interesting. And so you more than observed her and absorbed her own wisdom, but you also set out on that same track yourself. And what happened then?
Basically, so, I realized, again, this amazing country has all these great opportunities, but it wasn't just a question of becoming materially wealthy and secure and established, because, no matter, I know for myself how hard I worked and how much I succeeded in the material world, I still felt very empty and very much in poverty. And you can have your material, you have your material bank account doing really well, but if you're not satisfied and happy and content, what's the use of all that money? And that's when I discovered.
But of course, when we're young, Koorosh, we tend to look at the world in the terms the world sets, and not so much our own, because we're still maturing our own and evolving our own set of values and what's important inwardly and what's important outwardly. And we tend to be a little bit more outward focused and, keeping up with the Joneses or the Ostowaris or whomever, So when you started out in your real estate journey, certainly you may have felt spiritually empty, but you were also somewhat materially empty because you built this for yourself. Could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, you begin, and thank you, Mitchell. I think that's a very good summary of what we all go through as young people, growing and maturing, and it both accounts, bank accounts, were empty, really, spiritual, material, and emotional, and you're then having to go on this journey and figure out how to achieve in a balanced way, a wholesome way, hopefully both material and spiritual, mental, all that. But unfortunately, I even though I could see it in my mom, I was stubborn and went off on my own, and the world around me was very linear. It was very masculine oriented, very much pushing in the direction of material wealth.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until in my late 20s that I finally realized, true wealth is a practice of cultivating kind of like both areas of this garden. You've got to grow your tomatoes and then your lettuce, and then go out there and grow nice apples, and that's when I really finally realized, it's so important to go inside, go in there and really inquire around the question of what is true wealth and what is my unique definition of prosperity that's special to me, and your audience can probably ask the same question. We're no different, and for me it was important to be materially secure because I felt I was as an immigrant being in a country where there was the underlying tone and message was you have to be successful, you have to make it, and of course we didn't want to go back,
Right.
But I got to tell you, it did take a lot of hard work, but it more than anything, it was the way of finding the balance between those two worlds, material, spiritual, and emotional, and all creative as well. That was the hardest.
Yes, exactly. But I would imagine that in your earlier days, Koorosh, I think it's fair to say that about so many of us, your wish to sort of make it big so you would be secure, so you wouldn't be reliant on others or a system for that matter, was really your driving force. And I'm wondering about the relationship between the drive for material success and security and the later relationship that you cultivated with your own inner spiritual life. And how did the drive, and you must have gotten knocked around a lot because the real estate world is a very difficult one. And how do you see how you're getting tossed about in the one then led to your cultivation of the other?
It's a very good question, Mitchell. As you probably know, having done this, been through similar journeys, it's you get fixated on this path, and you think this is the right path, and in many ways it was, being in San Francisco and choosing my mother's footsteps to follow. But I knew, just like you and members of your audience, that there's something deeper than just achieving material comfort, wealth, success, whatever you want or you call it. And I think for me, the underlying theme or story that was running and driving me forward was still not resolved, which was, a story that was incomplete around who I really am in terms of my relationship with money. Growing up, I heard strange stories from my mother and father. I mean, Dad had a weird story around, money is the root of all evil, so I took Dad in. My mom was like, you've got to hang on to money. Money is, if you don't have it, you're nothing. And so I was torn between these two worlds, and I bought into those stories.
Yes.
And everyone's got their own story. We all grew up hearing as children or witnessing certain relationships and behaviors around money, and I think a lot of times those play themselves out. They both played themselves out in my life. One was, let me hang on, then it was, no, push it away. One was, continue to accumulate money through real estate, and the other one was, no, let it all go and be a monk. But at the end of the day, I think the Buddha is right. The middle way is the true way of freedom. And to get there, though, I mean, it took a lot of stretching and, exploring and expanding and inquiring. So.
Yes, indeed. The question that I was asking, Koorosh, in some measure comes out of the ancient Jewish tradition, actually, should also say Egyptian tradition, of Kabbalah, at least as it landed in the original Jewish tradition. This sacred, secret teaching, mystical teaching of Judaism was available only to people who had already been married, had children, and had been in the marketplace experiencing the grit of daily worldly life, the troubles, the stresses, the difficulties, the perplexities of being emotionally balanced and judicious and in integrity while you're being tossed and turned in every single possible direction. And that was the preparation needed to be able to open the book only afterwards, classically. After age 40, did you qualify only after all of that to study the inner teachings, mystical teachings of Kabbalah. So you see, I was kind of looking at that from this point of view of, our experiencing the pulls and the pushes of daily living in the marketplace in our society, and how that test helps prepare our heart and soul and body, for crying out loud, for perhaps the even more rigorous tests and trials and tribulations of being on the spiritual path.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think you're absolutely right, Mitchell. I mean, at the end of the day, really, I think we all have to ask ourselves, how is my relationship with myself and your higher power, whatever that is, and then how does that translate into your unique vision of prosperity that's right for you, whether it includes money or not, and how does it feel? I mean, I like the way you're bringing the body into this, because I always say the three things that are vital, I think, for our journey here with money is, number one, you got to get comfortable with the nuts and bolts of money, and we'll go into more details later. Number two, these mental perceptions and stories that we either inherit or buy into, or that are running through our mind that we don't pay attention to. And then number three, I think the physical GPS, I think the body part The part of us, the intuitive inner wisdom, where the body tells you through these signals, and that's what I mention a lot in the book, is, when you have these sensations in there that feel good, and they're like green blinking lights that say, hey, go, learning how to trust those feelings. When you sense you see the red blinking lights inside, you feel the tension, the constriction, the tightness, something is not right, something is saying stop. And so all we're trying to do here to simplify this is just, let's slow down, pay attention, mindfully and attentively see if we can just kind of look and see where are we with our relationship, with ourselves, with money, with each other. And is this really generosity of energy flowing? Yeah.
Really good. I overlooked, and you're really reminding me in spades right now, that another key aspect of your background training and professional work is as a somatic therapist. So you have gotten trained in listening to the signals of the body and the way the body speaks and reveals its own messages, its own wisdom, and ability to act as an antenna in our society, and when's the green light on, when's the red. That's right. So, of course, you tuned into that.
Thank you. If more people had done that, Mitchell, in the last recession, and trusted their gut feeling and said, hey, I'm not going to invest more in this house, or refinance my house, or lend this money or borrow this money, we probably wouldn't have had as bad of a crash, or people would have at least stepped back. It doesn't feel good to do this.
That's right. Bubbles wouldn't bubble up so much,
They wouldn't. Wouldn't. And I bet you, I bet you 90% of the people in your neck of the woods in Wall Street would probably be able to pause, if they did pause, every half an hour, said, what am I really feeling about this? Does this feel good?
Oh, boy.
And made decisions from a place of joy and gratitude and real kind of alignment with our mind, body, and our checkbooks, they probably would make different decisions.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And we're no different.
I'm sorry?
What I want to say, Mitchell, is we're no different.
Yeah.
Each of us have our own little world, that's revolving around, this energy of money. And so I think, we all kind of owe that to ourselves, to pause and be able to reflect.
Absolutely. You really articulate that really well in the book, Koorosh. You really walk us through a series of assumptions, like you were saying before about your own parents. Your father saying money is the root of all evil, and your mother is saying make it, don't spend it, otherwise you'll have nothing, and then you'll be nothing. Those are extreme polarities, and you had to metabolize both of them and come up with your own version of reality. Could you walk us through the way you walk the reader through your book as to what kind of signs and signals we should be looking for inside ourselves or in the marketplace so people can resolve their money anxiety issues? I promise that to our audience. I want us to deliver.
Oh, that's beautiful. These are good questions. Let's just begin with the problems we have in our society so we can name the challenges we're facing. Americans,
beautiful.
First of all, are more stressed than 144 other nations. They're 11th in life satisfaction, and they use 2/3 of the world's antidepressants. And the other thing is the American psychology. It's sad. This is going on not just in America, but in our own neighborhoods and possibly even in our own families. But the American Psychological Association did a survey, and they found out that 80% of those who took the survey around money said they had a tremendous amount of fear, stress, and anxiety around money. So they came up with the term money anxiety disorder, which really is...
Oh, that's actually in the DSM?
Yes. That is actually...
It's in the diagnostic manual. Oh,
right.
God. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And that's...
So interesting.
That's this, people who are in any kind of transition, whether it's a job change or asking for a raise, or if you're a woman. And by the way, of those 80%, majority of the people who do suffer from anxiety, fear, and stress and worry are women. Understandably so, because a lot of them either, their husbands leave, like my mother, or they die, or their kids grow up and go to college, and they've got to go build their career, or they've got to not depend on a man as much, and there's legitimate worry.
Sure.
Which then,
they're the caretakers of the children, and they have to be. They need that sense of security more than anyone. A man somehow makes it somehow, but a woman who has to be home with the children, oh my God, that's a whole other story.
No, my mother, my mom didn't want to, she raised us. She said, my dad could leave, but I'm going to stay devoted and committed. But the only thing is, these worries, these concerns, they show up, in forms of sensations such as constriction, tightness of the belly, speed,
contraction.
Contraction. You're kind of like feeling like you're on this spinning wheel, And so what happens is bringing the
mental
somatic
incoherence, emotional instability.
Yes. Feeling like you're living in a fog. You just can't get yourself up to sit and balance your checkbook, or even call a friend about your financial situation. Maybe. Yes. Isolation. Maybe there's all kinds of issues. Issues around sleeping. So. Unfortunately, when we're feeling threatened like this, or when there are these signals, and by the way, stress and anxiety and all that are just, telling the body there's something wrong. You've got to slow down, or you've got to address something that's up for you right now. But unfortunately, when we don't tend to them, like the respondents, majority of the people who responded to this survey, they tend to trigger this habitual survival response, this biological response that makes things even worse, and you end up in what we call fight, flight, freeze type response to your financial situation. And what we're all trying to do here is try to understand how these survival instinct responses get triggered, and how to, again, using mindfulness as a tool, along with the other tools that I mentioned in the book, but to really learn how to pause, how to stay attentive, present, compassionate, and break things apart and say, look, where am I with my financial situation? What's triggering these red blinking lights? And what are the steps I need to take in order to not, be in this category of being stressed, worried, and, confused or whatever? So that's the work. And it's a spiritual path. You know that. You've been through this, and I've been through it. But it's truly like going to the gym. You've got to commit to sitting with this every day, just like meditation, sitting on a cushion and making money and your finances your temple and your spiritual focus, in some ways. Part of your focus, not the whole focus, but a part of it. It's important because money is the energy that's everywhere, like oxygen.
I'm going to add something here, because this point that you just made, Koorosh, I think is so important. Because our, how do I say, I don't want to say Judeo-Christian in this case, but kind of Christian sentiment / ideology and assumptions in our society that underlie suggest that spirituality is over here, above, and materiality is over here, below, read below. One is superior not just in physical position, but rather in ethics, in importance, in overall worldview. And what you just said about money becoming a temple and to honor it and our work for it, toward it, as a spiritual path is so turning the old world on its head, and the spiritual world in general, including the New Age world, and the inherent assumptions there too, right? And to make the earning of money a good thing, a beautiful thing, a loving act toward oneself, loving kindness, that is fascinating. And I think just those phrases that you and I both shared could be really essential and transformative for people to rework in their own mind and brain their relationship to money.
Very well put. I think, Mitchell, I
Do you know what I mean? I really feel you set it up. You set it up, and I really appreciate it. I mean, and it's not like what happened with the money changers in the temple. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that we tend to denigrate the material world in general and subordinate it to this notion we have of the spiritual world in general. And if we were to abandon both assumptions and just say life is a totality that has its material aspect and it has its spiritual aspect, it has its grosser and its subtler, we'd be living different lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's when you get to that point, and this is what happened to me. I left my real estate business and went for 12 years and just started meditating over here at Spirit Rock Meditation Center in the Marin. Because I realized, I was still living these separate lives that you're talking about. Money's over here, and there's still something kind of not nice about making money and being, okay with having money flow through you. It's sort of like saying I'm not happy about having oxygen flow through me.
Wow, exactly.
When you're breathing in and out, when you're breathing in and out, you can't hoard oxygen. You can't keep it out unless you want to die, and you can't, hold on to it. And it's interesting when you mention all this is that money really is such a beautiful, transformative agent of transformation and change that it wants to come in and through us, but it also wants to flow. And so the question is, we all know, a lot of those of us who are listening, when you sit and you're sitting on a cushion or when you're watching life kind of unfold and it's coming and going, things are kind of moving in and out, just like the breath. If you can honor money the same way, getting out of the way, watching your mental perceptions, doing the nuts and bolts, and really having a better relationship, you'll notice money will just easily flow in and out, just like the breath. You'll have the money easily. And you may not have as much as you want, but you'll still be conscious around it. And then from there, you can decide and choose, where you want to go with it. There's no guarantees. I do want to say that, just like life has no guarantees with anything. But I think when we bridge that gap, Mitchell, I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is when you build a bridge between the material and the spiritual, then it's, we're in both worlds. We have our feet in both worlds. And it's our practice then to help others. I mean, this is what we're trying to do here, is help each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being in service. Yeah, absolutely. I really come from the place of the holistic and Taoist understanding that the material world is but, you were talking about a contraction, is more of a condensation of the spiritual anyway. It is inherently spiritual, and it's just on the other end of the polarity of the yin and the yang. So it's not separate from spirit. It just appears to be. It's you could say spirit materialized. And if we could walk with that, it just kind of changes the game. Same as our body. In that I was kind of referring rather generally to the Christian view that the body is also less, because it's part of the material, is less than the spirit. And I completely challenge that worldview and say, no. They are completely integral with and to each other and interdependent upon each other. It's a different worldview, isn't it?
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I think this is truly the new paradigm that we're all trying to wake up to, and I'm so glad you're talking about this. The one last little piece I want to add to this, because I just came from I teach at the Marin County Jail, and I work with women there, and really, at the core of why people fall through the cracks, whether they're rich or poor, and for whatever reason, it's usually often because they get stuck in one area or the other, and then there's suffering, and they don't know how to manage their suffering, or maybe they didn't have the right foundation. But when we remind them, hey, you know what? Your body is home. This is your temple. When you come back somehow, just even recognizing you're here, feeling your body again, feeling those gut feelings and those intuitive, sweet, lovely places in your body,
Yes.
You get a lot more guidance that is also spiritual, which a lot of us forget about. It's actually right here.
Exactly. And, there's the old idea, Koorosh, of, there are millions of souls floating around in the etheric realm that are just praying. I was going to say dying, praying to have a body, because the body is the place of alchemical transformation, without which spirit is just spirit, and it cannot metabolize and it cannot alchemize energy. We are, right? And playing with money is one of those energies that we get to play with in this life.
Beautiful.
So, let's let everybody know that you are listening to A Better World with Mitchell J. Rabin. We are on every Wednesday at 6 p.m. live, and we're on all the time in our radio archive, which is at www.abetterworld.tv, and you can also receive our free A Better World newsletter. Just go to that same website, abetterworld.tv, and sign up for it in the right-hand column. It's there. It comes out only once a week, and it will announce to you who our guests are for our weekly radio show, as well as TV show, which is aired every Monday evening at 7 p.m. in Manhattan. And, you don't live in Manhattan? No worry. It's also at that same website. You can watch it. It's webcast, simulcast, with the 7 p.m. EST airing here in New York City, so you won't miss out on anything. Today's guest is Koorosh Ostowari, who is the author of a really good book that I'd really encourage you to read and tune into, The Money Anxiety Cure. Koorosh lives in the Bay Area. He's been a very successful real estate entrepreneur, and he has been awarded this special recognition certificate this year by the United States Congress, and a certificate of recognition by the California State Legislature. And he's been working with the prisoners, especially women prisoners, with the work he does as a Spirit Rock Dharma meditation teacher, and money, how to make it, how to relate to it in a conscious way with awareness, and how to build it in a way that can be of service to humanity. So it's really such a pleasure to have you on, Koorosh. It really is. We've been talking about this for some time now, and I'm so glad that you finally came on and we could have this really rich dialogue. You've done so much good work, and it's just a pleasure to share it with this audience. What is it that you teach your students in prison? Make believe we are your students now. What do you want us to know?
Mitchell, first of all, thank you again for having me on your show. I love the work you do, and I think it's invaluable that that we're having this dialogue. I think we're all again in this together, and we all need reminders. I mean, I love my book because I read it all the time. I wrote it for myself, so it helps.
It helps you, right?
It helps me remember all the stuff that we tend to forget. And really what I'm doing with the women in prison are no different than the people I do in affluent neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, or anywhere else. It's just to remind them of who they really are, which are these amazing, incredible people with a tremendous amount of potential, with gifts and talents and, beautiful bodies and minds and hearts. And to help kind of not only raise awareness around who they are, where they are, and help them connect with that place of compassion, around what's happening with them right now, but also to reconnect them, to kind of rewire that part of their mind that forgot that they have a very unique and special purpose and mission on this planet. And so there's a lot of every time there's a lesson or an opportunity to gain insight, there's a rewiring going on. There's this kind of new neural pathway that gets developed around creating a new message, which is, hey, I can do what I want. I can do what I love. It's okay to forgive myself. It's okay to make money. It's okay to have money. It's okay to share money. If a lot of wealthy people have a hard time sharing or letting go of their money because they forget that. Yeah, they forget life is short. It's impermanent. Everything is changing.
Yeah, exactly.
And just because the women are in jail doesn't mean that the people outside of jail aren't as much in poverty and lost and confused or in prison, either. I mean, everybody's dealing with some form of confusion and suffering when they get stuck in those places, those old stories. And all I'm trying to do through mindfulness practice, we use theater techniques. We do inquiry practice, which is really just to drop in and look at what is it that's flowing right now, that's working, that feels good, whether they're creative ideas or whether they're a vision around a business or some way of contributing to the world. And then how do you materialize it? So we want to make women that come out of jails entrepreneurs again, because a lot of them are mothers and they're single and they don't, single mothers. Get them reconnected with themselves, and the people outside who've got anxiety and stress and worry, just to help them learn how to manage those things, those symptoms, and especially during the holiday season.
When you're counseling people, Koorosh, and they don't, you're telling them what incredible beings they are, and you're helping them. I mean, one of the things that landed them in jail or landed people who are not in formal jail, but many of us have said, we're all in the prisons of our own making. It's a classic traditional idea in spiritual circles. How it seems that they don't believe that story, that they're incredible and unique and remarkable, that they've lost track of that. They may say it to themselves consciously, but unconsciously there's this whole, if you will, backstory that says from their childhood, of course, in my role in doing psychology, you're not good enough, you're not deserving, you're not worthy, a word I mentioned at the very beginning introduction. How do you work with those deeply embedded belief systems?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. I think if I just look at my own life, I just realized it really is a very slow, gradual, layer-by-layer process. I mean, you gain insight. For example, those of us who meditate or went to meditate, you start learning and seeing when you sit quietly and still, wow, this is really what's going on. It's not just the outer world, it's what's going on in here. And when you gain insights around what feels pleasant, what doesn't, what are the stories that are passing through my mind, kind of like different little movies or, little scenes, what have I bought into and what am I not willing to buy into anymore? Just that alone, without judgment and without the critical mind, helps these people, especially the ones that have fallen through the cracks that are in prison, to stop blaming themselves, stop being harsh and criticizing themselves. So then they can take the next step and say, you know what, let me just feel into when I actually do forgive myself, how that feels. When I'm kind with myself, how that feels. And usually there's this fuzzy, somatically, there's this fuzzy, velvety feeling in your belly, in your heart. And then suddenly that then becomes a landing place where they could remember, hey, you know what, that's normal. That's the way I used to feel when I was 9 or 10 or 15 or whatever before I got hurt or violated. And just to remind them of what's normal, what's healthy, who they really are. Believe it or not, I mean, this happened to probably you and I, all of us who do some spiritual practice. The layers come off. Suddenly you're now going to make better choices. The words that come out of your mouth, and by the way, how that relates to money, is you come out of this place of maybe feeling a little contracted. You can actually go out and ask for that raise. You can actually talk to your partner about money. You can actually discuss money with your kids. You can actually decide if you want to lend the money to someone or not. You feel empowered to then choose, a path that is no longer the old path. It's a new beginning, a new path, that's unique to you. And along with that feeling of gratitude, when you start feeling that place of gratitude around what's working, comes generosity. And then the fuzzy, sweet, loving feelings of gratitude then leads to, well, what can I do to make a change? What can I do to help support other people? So it's one thing after another, and for me, there was no shortcut. I've tried making a lot of money thinking, oh, my God, that's going to make me happy. It didn't. Then I went to Spirit Rock for 12 years and just did a whole Buddhist thing, and that helped. It gave me insight, but it wasn't until I connected the somatic piece, the physical part of this whole picture, to complete this process. When I finally, did 5 years of somatic training and became a therapist and realized, when there's a disconnect with the body, you have nowhere to land. There's nowhere to really feel the sensations. And mindfulness practice is a beautiful tool, but you've got to connect it to your body. Take those feelings, those sensations, and then keep building on it, and then go out and see how that's going to support you around your finances. So it's a lot, but just in a nutshell.
Tell us about somatic. What is that particular kind of work?
Well, we're dealing with.
Is it a level of awareness training? Is it hands-on work? Is it? It could be. Know what it is?
Yeah, let me share with you that actually it's an amazing tool. It's just one more tool to put in your toolbox. You've got financial awareness. That's great. That's the first step. Mindfulness practice through meditation and cultivating clarity and presence through being focused and all that. That's another tool. The somatic piece is saying, you know what? I've got a body here, and I'm going to start paying attention to all the different signals and really understand what are they telling me. If I feel a tightness in my chest, what is that saying? So what we're doing is or belly or jaw or whatever, and it's the body's way of communicating to you. It's the nervous system communicating to you.
In its language.
In its own language, that, hey, something is either working or not working. And it's broken into the part of the nervous system we call the autonomic nervous system that's really there to regulate your internal environment. I don't want to get too technical, but it's divided into two parts. The sympathetic nervous system that protects you in case of an emergency. It mobilizes you.
And the parasympathetic.
Yeah, and the parasympathetic. But the sympathetic, there could be a real or an imaginary threat. So a lot of people around their finances have this imaginary threat or fear that they're going to be annihilated. Yes. My question to the audience or to the listeners is, what's really going on? If you're feeling nervous and uptight, can you pause, sit, feel your feet on the ground, feel your back against the chair, close your eyes, and really check in and ask yourself, is this a real story that's triggering the survival response? If it is, then get out of the way, take care of yourself, pay the bill, pay your rent, get out of the way of a bus or whatever. But if it's not, deal with it. Deal with it in a loving, compassionate way and say, hey, this is not a story that I'm going to buy into because it's triggering my fight, flight, freeze response. It's not healthy. Now, what we're trying to do, Mitch, just like you said, we want to get into the parasympathetic mode as much as possible, but not always, because you need the other stuff. You need to mobilize sometimes. You need to be in, fight, flight, freeze sometimes is healthy. If you're, being chased by a tiger and suddenly it's about to grab you, you may want to run and fight and freeze. You know what I mean?
You better.
You better.
Yeah, that's right.
Hopefully you will. But the key is
the result of millions of years of evolution. I don't think we want to turn that function off.
No, we don't want to turn that function off.
Rinpoche said that fear is packed with intelligence. Just make sure to use it when it's needed and not the other time.
Exactly. Now, around money, unfortunately, if these parts are running us all the time and our nervous system's getting shot, then it's like having your foot on the gas pedal and on the brakes at the same time. You got your feet
too much cortisol in the blood.
Exactly. Now, what we're proposing here in the book is to pause, take a breath, get organized, get comfortable with the numbers, get support. Even in New York, they've got a lot of nonprofits that help people, do counseling around their finances, starting a business. Pick up the phone, make a call, talk to a friend, and that calms the body down. Your nervousness will go away, and then suddenly you can start making decisions from a clear, conscious place, rather than from a place of worry, fear, stress, anxiety, jealousy, envy, whatever it is that's driving you. One last thing, Mitch, and that's if we don't do that, then everything that's unresolved gets projected onto your money and then gets sent out into the world, and then you create more of the same kind of stuff. Why not send out love, joy, peace, contentment?
Yes.
So that's
those people who write thank you on each check that they send out. They thank the person they're paying a bill to for the honor and privilege of being able to buy the service, even if it's electricity or, water, even so important these days in California and everywhere. It's a really interesting, you could say, inversion of the standard body, psychosomatic pattern that we have set up about paying money. And when you bring, as you're saying, love and joy around it, to the gift of it, both originally to us and then us to others, it's very powerful,
Beautifully, well put. So here's a practice, Mitch. I mean, when next time people get their bill, next time you get your bill, you get a water bill or something, and just hold the envelope and notice what comes up for you. Breathe, and then instead of rushing to open it and then saying, "Oh my God, I got another bill," hold the bill and, like you said, feel that gratitude of, my God, this is water. This is an amazing resource. Someone's managed to get this water into my tap so I can take a shower and my kids could brush their teeth. Feel the gratitude, and then when you write the check, put the checkbook in front of you, feel the gratitude of having the funds, or maybe you don't, I don't know, but whatever you're feeling, honor it. And then when you're writing the check, write it with that feeling of joy and gratitude and appreciation. And then that right there will shift the neural pathways, and you'll have a new attitude approach.
Oh, yes.
It's a simple practice that we can all do. Or when you're handing out that $1 bill to the homeless guy, look in his eyes and say, feel that joy of generosity, and then you hand it to him rather than, here you go, throw it in his hand. Do it differently this time. Try something different. You're about to walk into the store and usually buy your usual thing. You may want to pause and say, what does it feel like, just to kind of feel into, do I need this item? Is this really the right, especially during the holiday season when it's crazy and frantic out there? Pause and feel, and then make a decision from a place that feels aligned with your mind, body, spirit, and checkbook.
Yes. That's beautiful. It's almost like you get paid twice. You get paid by paying. I mean, you get paid by the joy that you're bringing forward in the transaction.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, Mitch, none of this stuff belongs to us. I mean, we're sharing energy. We're sharing oxygen. We're sharing love. Money circulates. Really, it has to circulate. And it's why not come through you and me and others who are committed to being a caretaker for it and doing the right things to get it. Hopefully the right job, the right work, or right exchange of services or goods, but to consciously be able to manage this energy so it goes out and does something good for the world, because right now we need that more than anything.
God, that's really true. I got to tell you, I mean, I feel like I'm frequently dealing out. Let me lie on your couch for a moment here. Koorosh, in my business dealings, of which there are many, and in fact in real estate as well, to some extent, way different than yours. But in one case, I was to go into a partnership with somebody, and then we kind of morphed it into that I was simply going to lend him money over some time, and he was going to be purchasing real estate and paying me back kind of an ample interest rate. And, I agreed to the change in terms. But to this day, even though, for me, $50,000 is a very big sum of money. And he has not returned any of it, but with promises to do so. Well, those go back some time now. But I feel that there are issues, and this is just one of many, many around this, issues of integrity, where people just simply do not keep their word, and then it escalates into what can become a legal matter, and certainly a stressful one. And when, X, Y, and Z is agreed to, and it is not fulfilled as agreed to, a other things come up. What would you say in a situation like that? How do you deal with that yourself? Because certainly you've run into these. This is a standard kind of almost cookie cutter kind of issue between people.
Mitch, you bring up such an important point and something we all grapple with, because at the end of the day, as you said, it's truly about integrity. I mean, I witnessed my mother and how she went from a single mom knocking on thousands of doors with no English, saying, "Hey, do you want to sell the house? Do you want to buy a house?" She had a car with one door working. It was the driver's side. So people had to pile in through the driver's side back in the 70s to go look at a house. But you know what was interesting? She had the humility to just stay in integrity and say, you know what, This is who I am right now. I got 3 kids. And as a result, people loved her for her simple, honest presence. She was able to sell a lot of homes, eventually buy a lot of homes. And the first thing she said to me, and I know your parents probably said the same to you, Koorosh, you can't get anywhere without integrity, without honesty, without keeping your word. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people we are dealing with, it's like the light and the dark. It's not everyone is able or willing to keep their word, and it's sometimes it boggles my mind. How is it that X, Y, and Z can completely, renege on their agreements and feel okay about it, or maybe they just can't do it, but they're not making an effort to do something. And there's a point where the lesson for me and for everyone, all of us who've been in this situation, Mitch, is to, with compassion, with empathy and compassion, just say, I could listen next time more carefully to my own intuitive wisdom, make sure. And this is not to shame anybody out there, but it's just to say, I know sometimes when it doesn't feel right to give out that 5,000, 10,000, 100, whatever it is. It doesn't feel right. And now I know, and that could have been the greatest lesson. Maybe that's, unfortunately, the lesson I have to learn, to finally trust that ability to say, no, thank you, I love you, but I just can't do it. It doesn't feel right. And then the other, so empathy, compassion for ourselves, and then the other person, which is really hard to have compassion for someone who's reneging on their agreements. But really, I after seeing my mom being cheated many times and having to start all over again from con artists all over the place, we finally realized, it's like a muscle. You just keep learning and learning and learning, and you finally keep loving yourself and saying, I'm never going to do this again, and I'm going to go out and make more money because I have a lot to offer. There's no real answer, but I think that's, I don't know what else you can do, really.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering how you answered it beautifully. I mean, it's sort of like life, and it's sort of hard for those of us who really value integrity and to keep our word, and when we say something, we do it, or we revise what we said quickly, and change our promise or commitment, and then, it's okay. But when done, in a timely way. But it's boggling.
Mitch, and if you,
it's truly boggling.
And it is. And, Mitch, it's okay sometimes to take action. I mean, I want to say, just because we do all the spiritual practice and meditate and be Buddhist and all that, doesn't mean we have to stay passive. I mean, this is one of the challenges in the spiritual community. People don't realize, it's that balance between being a warrior and being this nurture kind of, goddess, mother energy kind of person, but you've got to have it all. Pull out whatever
you really do.
You need.
You're highlighting, Koorosh, the idea of the distinction, contrast between compassion and idiot compassion. So, I'm in a situation of suing somebody,
Yeah.
And that's actually, and it doesn't mean I don't care about them or love them, not at all. But maybe I love myself and respect myself and my own principles more than I value their sloppiness and unconsciousness, whatever it may be that is keeping them from doing the right thing.
Exactly. I think that's a very that's staying in integrity. I think that feels like the right thing to do.
I do too.
We do need to take action and take care of yourself. I mean, sort of like that saying, tie your camel before you go pray in the mosque, or,
Exactly, right.
Make sure you
believe in
secure
God and tie up your horse or your camel.
Tie up your horse before you go in.
Exactly. But before I let you go, I'd love for you, and you shared some of these in your book, The Money Anxiety Cure, some of the stories of your students, some of them who were got out of jail and had a new life because of what they've learned with you in your classes, and others who, just others that followed your footsteps and began to prosper. Will you share one or two of your favorite stories with us?
Yes, I would. I would love to. I mean, we've had everything from white-collar criminals who lived in $10 million mansions and, they ended up in my classes in the jail, and who, had to understand what happened to them and why they got there. And, I had a woman, for example, who then fell in love with meditation and then became a somatic counselor and a MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, John Kabat-Zinn's work. So she's outside now, got out, and that's what she's teaching. Instead of doing criminal activity, she's helping people wake up. Others end up working at Whole Foods and, get, honorary distinction in our society by doing really good work. I've had a Goldman Sachs guy from your area who ended up in my class, and he finally said, I've had it with that world. And, I took drugs to numb out. I was in so much pain, and now I just want to work in a bookstore. So he works in a local bookstore, and he learned mindfulness and somatic tools. And I wanted to also mention to your audience, if they'd like, we have a quiz on my website, themoneyanxietycure.com, that they could take that would help them kind of understand a little bit deeper around their relationship with money. And wherever you're at, just know we're all dealing with the same challenges. The ups and downs, the changes, the ability to get up and go out and make those requests or start these conversations around money. Just know that when you connect with yourself through compassion and love and understanding, it's the right thing to do. It's the most high integrity way to live. You owe that to yourself and of course the planet right now.
God knows. God
knows. Yeah.
Wow, that's just, that's a lot, and it's beautiful to hear that there have been numerous success stories of people. And what's interesting is that hundreds. Oh, God. That success is not measurable by any one yardstick for that one fellow who was once at Goldman Sachs and probably making what they call a killing on Wall Street. And I think we really ought to examine that phrase very closely, because it literally is a murdering usually of a lot of people in some continent somewhere, if not our own, for them to earn the kinds of revenues they do. I don't even want to use the word earn, but I should say receive, if not steal. For him at this point, after his journey in jail with you through drugs, is to work in a bookstore. I mean, and for him, that's the thing he feels called to do. That's very beautiful, really.
It is, and Mitch, I just want to again just emphasize it's our unique vision and path towards prosperity that matters. And as you said, you can't quantify prosperity and success. It's your own unique way. So all of us have to find our own unique approach and our own unique way to contribute. So, that's the main thing that I wanted to emphasize.
Yes, I really appreciate it. I've used the phrase many times, I'm very, very rich, Koorosh, and someday I'll even have some money.
You are indeed, my friend, and the work you're doing is incredibly rich and very useful and helpful for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you. Well, thank you so much for being on with me today and sharing with our audience, some of the magic of your work and wisdom of your path.
My pleasure.
Really
My pleasure.
Beautiful.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We'll do it again. Okay. Koorosh Ostowari, the author of The Money Anxiety Cure. And your website again is themoneyanxietycure.com.
Exactly, yeah.
Beautiful. Great. Well, thanks again, Koorosh, and we will be speaking very, very soon.
Thank you, Mitchell. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. You too now.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was a really, I just appreciate that dialogue. What does it feel like to talk about those things that make you squirm a little bit? Money, sex, politics, religion? Come on. Come up with them. You know what they are. And death? You bet. These are the things that make humans squirm and get a little fidgety, and they begin to question themselves and wonder where they stand with these very germane matters for life on planet Earth. And we all need to reckon with some awareness and perhaps with some wisdom. And as Koorosh kept reminding us, listen to the body, listen to the signals of the body. The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are in action and speaking to us in one way or another through sensations. That's the language of the body. And it's up to us to tune in. So what a rich conversation. I so appreciate Koorosh's work. And he's from the Bay Area. I'm going to be out there myself rather soon. So I really very much appreciate what he's doing and bringing to the table. And he also exemplifies something I'd just love to share as well, which is that after somebody has become materially wealthy, we use the phrase, or comfortable in a way that, or recognized by our very ordinary, conventional, standard measures as being wealthy, yes, that a man like him has the heart and the mind to then share with others. Share on the level of, yes, money in whatever ways he may, but his knowledge as well as in his experience, and decided to then, after having made a good sum of money, to then turn inward and begin to develop his inner wealth, his inner life, and did that in this case through studying mindfulness meditation and taking that with the material understanding of how to make it, how to work with it, how to relieve anxiety around it, and help others really succeed materially as well as spiritually, is really a beautiful example of what we can all embody. You know, it's not just about me, me, me. Koorosh kept emphasizing the idea of flow, of circulation, that we don't come in with it, we don't go out with it, basically, so it needs to be shared. I love quoting, many of you know this, Reverend Jesse Jackson's phrase that we all took different boats here, but we're all in the same boat now. And we better start to get used to that idea, because our prejudices and our biases and our subjective valuations sometimes of things and of each other become cumbersome. And we need to work with those deeply rooted prejudices, conditionings that we're all subject to. It's just another touchy subject that nobody really wants to deal with. I had my nose kind of pressed into it through work I did in graduate school in psychology, through what was called group relations conferences, Tavistock work from Tavistock, England, the work of Bion, B-I-O-N. Very interesting in working with issues around authority and then other subjects that are related to that, those subjects that we like to deal with least, but know we have to deal with most, such as, guess what? Money, and yes, sex, and yes, religion, belief systems, faiths, politics, and I could say taxes or I could say death. I'll say both, because all of these subjects are the subjects. Health is another one. Self-love, I would say, really is another. There's much in our society that teaches us that there's something wrong with that. And but to love others is good, but to love ourselves is egotistical or narcissistic. Wow, such interesting impressions we receive as infants, let alone as children. And frankly, I like to go back to our prenatal days. We went from the zygote to a multicellular being. And during the course of those trimesters, we are actually absorbing a tremendous amount of energy in the form of frequencies, sound vibration, tonality of the voices of our mothers especially, and our fathers, and the parents of both. Wow. And we're absorbing and beginning to metabolize and interpret reality even then, in the earliest days of our beginnings. It's very humbling. The good news, of course, is that there is neuroplasticity. There is mutability of all things. And even though it may appear that we are stuck in a certain mental frame, addiction of any sort, including to money, by the way, or including greed, which I have blown the whistle on so many times, that I feel is one of the deep pathologies of our current society and leading us down a path that is just the opposite one we really want to be on. We have the whole ability, according to physics and chemistry, to shift our biology and shift from one mindset to another, to go from an addiction, whether that's to a substance or an idea or a feeling for that matter. I think that's where so much of the addictions we all deal with come from. Addiction to a certain kind of feeling can be mutated, can be transmuted, and that's very, very powerful. And our own intuition lets us know that, as well as these days science lets us know that. And it's very interesting. So when Koorosh talks about transforming the anxiety around money by taking it out of a generalization and getting specific, and then because of his practice, sitting with it, being aware of the sensations in your body around it, and letting them come and letting them go. Wow, you've just created space around that thing, whatever it may be, that was causing anxiety. What happens when you create space? It no longer, whatever that thing is, no longer has the same grip. It becomes unstuck. It becomes unglued. You've allowed space around it. You've created space around whatever the it may be. Fill in the blank. In this case, of course, we've been talking about money today. But you can also substitute anything into that blank spot in that sentence. Interesting? And this is what we have when we talk about understanding the larger holistic spiritual and materialist continuum. And we all find our place along that path about how to shift the consciousness. And what I'm saying is the science, the quantum science, quantum mechanics, and neuroscience is giving us the fundamental scientific corroboration of how these mechanisms work of transformation. It's very powerful. And it underlies so much of Koorosh's good book. So go to our website, abetterworld.tv. You can pick it up there. Go under newsletter, or the show will be archived at abetterworld.tv in a matter of hours. So grab the link, share it with your friends and your loved ones and your business partners, and let's use money to be in service to creating a better world. That's our game, folks. That's our game here, and I believe it's really our game everywhere. And we're dealing with an incredibly dicey, confused, and unconscious world in so many respects. And there's so much yearning for love, for connection, for warmth, for ease of living. And money can be one of those pathways that can help to alleviate suffering and help to ease our own lives and create some sense of security. At least buy land and plant your own seeds, folks. I mean, there are so many creative, wonderful things that can be done. And I like to think of money as an expression of love, as a way we show each other love. It's only one of many, many ways, God knows. But it's nice to think of our giving to each other, or things that money can buy. Food sometimes is needed. A shelter is needed. Medicine sometimes is needed, or herbs. And it's a way of interacting with each other in a way that can be very meaningful. So on that note, I want to just thank you all for tuning in today and listening. I so appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to be of service to you. And remember that A Better World is a nonprofit now, a 501c3. So any donation, I like to think of them instead of as investments. You are doing yourself and us a tremendous service to keep us on the airwaves and expanding on the airwaves in radio and TV and the other media we use, our newsletter, website, etc., social media. And, it's like an investment in your own future. And especially around the holidays, you can enjoy the tax deduction. So appreciate your participation in what we do. And this is one way for you to meaningfully contribute and participate. So on that note, thank you again. You can always reach me at mjr@abetterworld.net, mjr@abetterworld.net. So appreciate your feedback, your comments. Keep them coming, folks. It's always a pleasure. And it helps me grow and learn and tune in to what your interests are so our show can best serve them as well as what I feel is important for people to learn. So, happy holidays to one and all, and I look forward to seeing you all next